welcome to our new Cardiac Café, Managing Anxiety and Device Awareness. Today, I think we're going to be talking about a topic that resonates with most pacemaker and defibrillator patients, especially when the device is new to you and to your family. We're going to be talking about post-surgery anxiety, normal device sensations, phantom feelings, and building mental resilience. Today, we have with us Jes Landau. She is a former board member with Four Hearts Worldwide and received her device at a pretty young age. I'll let her tell her story. And then, of course, I'll be moderating the session along with Jes. So I'm going to have Jes introduce herself and say a few words before we get into it. So welcome, Jes. Thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. Thank you for having me. So yes, I am Jes. I have had a pacemaker for 32 years. So in some ways, it feels very normal. In some ways, I think with every surgery, there's always new things that you're going through. But, how blessed am I? I'm so blessed. And so I'm happy to be here and kind of share my experience. As somebody who has had one pretty much their whole life and has had 7 heart surgeries for this. So I'm here to help support in any way that I can. I'm only speaking from my personal experience, though, just so everybody knows, I am not a doctor or anything like that. I am just somebody who is 100% dependent on a pacemaker and is living a beautiful life because of it.
Awesome. Thank you for being available and sharing your experience. That's what this is all about. Neither Jes nor I are doctors or mental health workers or specialists. We're here talking about experiences and trying to share tidbits of knowledge that have seen her through tough times and hopefully can help with the rest of our audience. So with that, let's look at the agenda for today. I think I mentioned most of these at the beginning, but we're going to be talking about the early stages of life with a device, sensations versus reality, understanding what's normal and what is a phantom feeling, managing long-term anxiety, battery life, lead checks. Jes mentioned she's had lots of surgeries and a couple change outs, and we can talk to this, I think, thoroughly.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah. And then her specialty, which she is so good at and has, worked really hard at building mental resilience, tools for new and long-term recipients. And this is really the crux of this Cardiac Cafe, is really talking about how do we process these feelings that we're having? How do we see the pacemaker defibrillator as an asset to the patient versus something foreign or something to be threatened by? So we're going to talk about these different topics throughout the presentation. Jes is going to give her personal experiences, and we hope that you'll pick up some tips from it and learn something along the way. So with that, I think that the first topic is really how do you adjust, or how did you adjust, Jes, to having this, and I'm going to use that quote, foreign object, in your body and living with it, adjusting to it, and how long did it take for you to really see it as an asset and to understand the value that it's bringing? And you might want to mention how old you were when you got the device, because you'll have a unique perspective, I think.
Yeah. So I was 10 years old when I got my first pacemaker. And I think in many ways, it was a blessing because I didn't really actually understand fully that I had this heart condition. I understood that there was something different about me, but my parents did a really good job of just trying to let me just live my life and just be. But when you talk about even the 3-month rule of how do you feel within 90 days? I couldn't necessarily tell you from that very first surgery what it was like because it's just over 30 years ago. But I do remember very vividly being in the hospital and having that surgery. And right after the surgery, waking up, and they spent the night there, and they turned the pacemaker off, and I felt my heart beating and being in so much pain and screaming and crying. And they were like, okay. And then they put it back on, and they're like, this is your heart has already gotten accustomed to feeling good. And I will never forget that sensation of being I don't want to ever feel like that again. And so I think that's something that still resonates all these years later. I don't know why they did that to me. It was literally the only thing I remember from the surgery, that and getting a Milky Way from my father afterwards. But
I remember that
but I feel like as a kid though, I went back to the soccer field. I played. I mean, I was definitely more hesitant afterwards just because I was always scared somebody would hit it. But in general, I feel like I was really, like, blessed through the whole transition, like, that in many ways that it happened so early the first time.
I wonder, I mean, obviously I wasn't there. I didn't know you. I'm not a doctor, all of those things, but I'm just thinking in my head, maybe that was a way for them to help you understand the power of the device and yeah, and why it was needed and why, why and how it was helping you. But yeah, I wonder, I think maybe talking a little bit about what happened to you and why you need a device might also help some of our audience and Pacemaker Club members understand, your references and your perspective on it. So I don't know if you mind sharing a little bit of that
No, of
story.
course. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I wasn't actually born with my heart condition. It happened when I was 2 years old. I had the chicken pox and the flu at the same time. And at the time, the doctors just actually think between those 2, it attacked the electrical system of my heart. So as like a 2-year-old, they kept complaining about my belly hurting, not knowing it was actually that my heart was hurting. My mom took me to get all these tests done, and everything came back abnormal, like down the chart. I mean, my earliest childhood memories are actually on a treadmill with all the little wires and like them just testing my heartbeat. And then when we moved to Colorado when I was 9 years old, that actually I think it, like exasperated the situation because of the altitude. So my heart was actually stopping at night for 3 to 4 seconds at a time, and that's when they decided to put the pacemaker in. There was kind of this idea and hope that my heart would heal itself. It just never did. And then going to Colorado and like the altitude, and I remember like we go hiking and I couldn't keep up because of it. So that's when they decided to put the first pacemaker in. So I was 10 years old when it happened, but again, like I wasn't born with this condition or anything like
Mhm.
that, but my heart never was able to kind of recover from it.
Yeah, I think it's important just from a perspective, to understand that, things happen and we have all kinds of patients. You can be a congenital, heart issue. It could be an illness like you got. It could be, so many things that lead to this. And that's why everybody's experience is a little bit different. So you said your heart actually was stopping at night. Obviously, you have a defibrillator then implanted, right?
No, I have a pacemaker.
Oh, you have a pacemaker. Okay, so it's not a
Yeah.
defibrillator. Okay. So has the type of pacemaker changed over the years, or do you still like, is it gone from, well, I mean, like, is it a single, dual resynchronization? Do you know like what you had and versus what you have now?
I actually have no idea what I have.
Okay.
Anybody can do this, you guys. Anybody can have a pacemaker and live a beautiful life. Look at that.
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
I
I
was
mean,
just curious mostly for my, like, curiosity about the progression of, what you've gone through. So
I've gone through a lot, but I actually don't know what type of pacemaker I know
that's
the
okay. Yeah.
brand, but that's about it because I have
Yeah.
my little app that tests it and everything, but
Yes. Okay. Well, we did a whole session on the apps and the remote monitoring, so that can be another one that our audience
oh, good.
watches.
Yes, listen to
Yeah,
that.
later on. So, okay. Well, so I think from your perspective, do you ever feel like phantom pulses, or do you feel like any shocks or anything like that that causes you to question your device in any way, or is you're pretty steady?
I'm pretty steady. I think when I was younger, I had stuff, and there was a time, I want to say it was like right after my oldest was born. I had one pacemaker surgery when my oldest was like 2 years old, and like a couple years after that, I was convinced things were happening with my heart. I think I was just actually dealing with a lot of just life anxiety. I was going through a divorce also, and I didn't know how to like decipher what was what, and I think there was more like panic versus anything, but like my natural reaction, and it probably happens for a lot of people with pacemakers, is to actually just assume the worst case scenario with your pacemaker, especially if you're dependent on it. But that's the only time in like my adult life where I can feel like I remember being worried, like something must be wrong with me.
Mhm.
And they checked it a gajillion times and nothing was wrong.
Which is good news. Yeah.
And then, yeah, thank goodness. And then I can say though, like when it's time for a new battery, I can definitely feel the difference when my body is slowing down. Like I actually, on my last surgery, knew the moment the pacemaker went into like the backup mode because I
Mhm.
actually felt the blood in my entire heart slow down. It was the
Wow.
craziest sensation. So I mean, I can tell like when a pacemaker is like almost done because you can feel like significantly different in the dip of like your energy. But I'm pretty lucky that I haven't had like phantom things or anything like that, except for that one time in my life. But I think I was actually just under an enormous amount of stress and was like, fix my heart, it'll fix it. I mean, obviously my heart was broken in many ways in that point, but like, fix my heart, it'll get better. But I feel like I'm pretty lucky, but also again, like I've had this for 32 years. So how I experience it versus somebody who might be getting a pacemaker today is going to be very different.
Right. Right. Exactly. Well, and I think that, like we just keep saying, everybody's experience is different, but any tips that you can pick up from any patient is something to like carry with you from, dealing with the, next phases of your life perspective. So all of that is helpful. So we kind of talked about this a little bit, like you actually felt like the heaviness of your body and like your heartbeat changing and metabolic changes to yourself when your device was going into backup mode. What was the time frame? Like when that happened, what was the time frame to your surgery? Like how long did you deal with that?
Too long, in my opinion. I mean, I was like, get me in today. And, of course, then they're like, well, we need the insurance to approve of it and all of that. And like, I think the last surgery was probably the most anxious I've ever been for a surgery in all my years. Like, I've done this 7 times, and that was probably the worst. But it took about a week for them to get me in because of waiting for the insurance to approve of it, which I was like, this is bananas. And I'm sure that that's a whole other topic that I probably shouldn't be going into, but it adds anxiety and it does add stress. And so be aware, like be in communication with your doctor for sure. My doctor was probably tired of hearing from me, but I called every single day because I was like, I'm ready, I'm ready, I'm ready. And they're like, okay. I also find that the doctors are a lot calmer than me as a patient when it comes to this because they just see so many people and like your own experience is hyper sensitive and hyper like
Of course.
overwhelming, I guess. Yeah. So they were all real calm about it. I wasn't. Um, but I do remember like at that surgery getting on the table and the guy who was from the pacemaker company was there in
Mhm.
the surgery room with me.
Mhm.
And he looked at me, he was like, any chance you felt really bad yesterday? And I told him, I was like, I couldn't even bend down to get a toy off the floor for my kid. And he was like, yeah, he's like, this one's done. And so
Wow.
like, you'll know, like you cannot miss it. And so like,
Wow.
when it comes to like the phantom stuff, like when you've experienced issues with your pacemaker, you can't miss it to like, you will know if there is something significantly wrong. The other time that I can remember there being an actual issue was when I was 16 being on the soccer field and my coach just like yelling and being like, run. And I was like, I can't. I like physically can't run. And it was my father who was like, I wonder if there's something wrong with her pacemaker. And the
Mhm.
battery, they're supposed to last about 10 years. That one only lasted 6. And so, thank goodness he recognized it. I ended up having surgery right away. But like,
Mhm.
you'll know like your body physically changes if your pacemaker is actually having an issue, and I think that that's like an important thing to kind of be aware of.
Absolutely. I think that's the purpose of this, one of the purposes of this episode, right? Is to distinguish between those phantom things and those, things that might be in your head versus the actual physical changes that you feel and experience when you're going through this. When you were calling the doctor every day, did they provide guidelines for you? Did they provide reassurance? Did they provide suggestions? Because knowing that, you were waiting that week and obviously you were getting anxious and you were getting nervous and tensions were rising. Did they suggest anything to you? Did they help reassure you in any manner?
Unfortunately, no. I actually ended up having my husband call every day because I got to the point where I was so anxious. Um, they just kept being like, "Don't worry, she's gonna be fine. Don't worry, she's gonna be fine." And like, it's not probably what other people will want to hear because I didn't want to hear it, but that was my experience, especially on
Mhm.
that last surgery.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. And maybe, yeah, I don't know. The last surgery wasn't the greatest experience when it came to yeah.
Right.
So, like, I would
Well,
say, like, make sure you have a great support system around you.
Well, that was gonna be my next, question. I think one of the topics that we've talked about in other episodes is, doctors are doctors and they're really great at some things, but they're also just like us, not mental health counselors or, they don't have that training. So we're actually focusing a lot on that right now within the Pacemaker Club community. We've got some things in the works to help we hope provide resources to our colleagues and the members of the Pacemaker Club. One of our previous sessions, an electrophysiologist talked about the remote monitoring and how they've actually trained some of their staff that deal with the remote monitoring to help talk patients through, some of the anxiety that might come with feedback that they're getting off of the monitor and helping them, kind of work through that, understand why some things, as the patient, it might not be meant for you to see versus the doctor to see, and that how that
Yeah,
causes anxiety and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of effort and there's a lot of movement that's happening right now around mental health in general, but also
appreciate
around
that.
anxiety and mental health with pacemakers and other implantable devices, for patients. What were some of the techniques that you used during that week? And you mentioned your support system. What were some of the things that you did and your support system did to help you try to relax and have some
Yeah.
confidence?
Honestly, I probably did a gajillion puzzles that week. I mean, it was the only thing that could distract my mind from the waiting. So,
Mhm.
I don't know if it's reading, if it's movies, if it, whatever it is. Like, I didn't have the energy to do anything.
Mhm.
I physically couldn't like take care of anything in the house. I was just so exhausted. So I just sat at the dining room table and I
Mhm.
puzzled for an
Mhm.
entire week. I mean, I got
Mhm.
so many puzzles done, but it was the only thing that let my brain stop thinking about the fact that I
Right,
was waiting for a heart surgery.
right, right. So
Mhm.
distraction helped you a lot through the process.
1,000%.
Yeah.
1,000%.
I mean, obviously your husband and your kids and the
Yeah,
support
I mean,
were helping you pick up some of those things that you weren't physically able to do at the time.
yeah, I mean, my husband knew how stressed I was. My kids didn't. I didn't need them worrying about it.
Mhm.
But he definitely was my rock for sure. So if you have like a friend or a spouse or a parent,
Mhm.
like I openly was like, I'm releasing my anxiety to you and I need you to hold on to it because I'm not going to make it if I have to do this by myself.
Well, I think I mean, just saying that and I know when I've gone through bouts of anxiety and things, it's a mindset. A lot of it is, and for you to say like I'm giving this to you right now, I'm sure it doesn't make it go away. It doesn't make it disappear, but it takes some of the heaviness
Yeah.
off of you so that you can focus on the distraction or you can focus on the let me get through this day. And here's what I need. So being vocal and
Oh yeah.
communicating to people, what would be helpful for you, I think is what I'm hearing you
A
say.
1,000%.
Yeah. Yeah. So those are two, I think, 2 or 3 really good tips right there of how to manage it. Like having your support system, verbally talking and communicating to people, distraction, those kinds of things, to help you through it, especially in that particular case when you know it's more of a short term, hopefully, it's a short term time frame that you're dealing with. You mentioned that you've had a device for 32 years. Was there ever a time frame in that 32 years? And I'm talking like the things that we just talked about, with the most recent surgery are like that week leading up to it and the how anxious. But has there ever been a time in that 32-year history where you have just felt anxious, nervous, maybe not trusting in your device and from a long-term perspective? Do you have any experience with that you can share and maybe some techniques that you used in that scenario?
I mean, I don't know if I have techniques. I definitely had a period of time where it was really hard with my pacemaker. I had a surgery at 16, 17, 18, and 19. And so 16 was to replace the battery. That was like when my coach was yelling at me to run. When I was 17, it fell into my armpit. And
Oh,
so the lead wires weren't long enough. So I had to have surgery to get it back in place. So it didn't like dislodge or unplug itself or whatever the word I'm looking for. When I was 18, I actually had a recall on the pacemaker. And in that surgery, my lung was punctured. And so it collapsed by 25%. I was on oxygen for the whole summer. And then when I was 19, I had another surgery because they used to put my pacemaker underneath the muscle because I
Mhm.
played soccer and I ended up playing college ball. It was to kind of try to protect it so I could just
Yeah.
play without ever being nervous or like worried. But from all those surgeries, my chest muscle was actually detached. And so the pacemaker was just moving around and I was like in excruciating pain.
Wow.
So that was probably the hardest time besides like that last surgery and that last week. But like, I don't know if I would say I have techniques. I think it's like a matter of just trusting the process, trusting that it's going to be okay. You know, for me, because I'm 100% dependent on it, the option is get the surgery or the consequence, right? Like,
Mhm.
so I've actually had a lot of people reach out to me on my Instagram account that talks about pacemakers and people just being nervous about getting their first surgery or getting a replacement surgery. And what I would just say is just remember like all the fear that maybe comes from the surgery or comes from a complication, just knowing that the alternative is worse, right? And just trusting like, no, everybody wants you to win in this situation. The doctors
Right.
want you to win. The nurse wants you to win. Your family wants you to win. You want you to win. And as positive as you can kind of keep it to just know, like, no matter how hard it's getting, it's going to get better because you're going to feel better. And like, I haven't met a pacemaker person who's gone through what I've gone through in that 4-year period ever. So like, I've taken it for all of us. Don't worry. You're good. Like the odds are 100% in your favor now. But I just think that that's the biggest thing is just remembering like you're so blessed because you're getting a pacemaker. And if you can come from a place of gratitude, all the other stuff won't matter.
Right. We've heard that from almost every single person that we have interviewed on this Cardiac Cafe.
Yeah.
And I think perspective and putting yourself in that positive mindset and remembering that, to the point we talked about, like this device, this mechanism, this technology is allowing you to live your beautiful life that you
Yeah.
have.
1,000.
And if you can get past I have a foreign object in my body, or I have this machine or this computer or this chip or this whatever, to what can I do today that that I may not have been able to do because, I didn't have this. I think perspective and mindset is, a huge game changer when it comes. That's what I've
1,000%.
heard. That's what I've heard, from our and I think that speaks to, one of the things you've talked a lot about already is that sort of replacement anxiety and remembering that the doctors want this to work. Your family, everybody is on your side,
Yeah.
and that even through all of that you went through, they have recalls for a reason. They have a recall to protect you. They have different techniques to protect you. They have different size leads to protect you.
Yep.
It's all to hopefully make everything work as smoothly and as cohesively, as possible. And keeping that in the forefront,
1,000%.
yeah, is really, what that means. So building mental resilience, I know you've had to do this quite a few times throughout your life. And, I've heard you speak and talk about your story, which is, I think it brought tears to our whole audience
Hmm.
that evening. And you've kind of hinted at, some of it in our conversation today. But is there anything, around mental resilience or anything around that you want to add that maybe our listeners and your followers, might want to hear or need to hear from you?
So, I mean, I think it's really important what you feed yourself, right? Not just like I'm not talking like food. Okay. I'm talking like what you
That is important
literally
also, but
yeah, like what I mean, I love a piece of chocolate, but what you're putting in your mind, right? And so, I was reading this book the other day and it was talking about how you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with, which I think a lot of us have heard. Okay. So if you're with people who are positive, you tend to be more positive. If you're with people who are negative, you tend to be more negative, right? So like I think your surrounding is really important. And then in this book, though, it's like, but there's this one person that you spend the most amount of time with. And I remember like reading that. I was like, oh, thank God I have Mike, which is my husband, just so everyone knows. I was like, he is like my best friend. He is everything for me, right? He's like the person who takes care of everything. And then the next line is, it's yourself. And that hit me so hard because I was like, oh, I am with myself 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I'm the person who's actually the most responsible for making sure that my mindset is in a good place. And so I think that, whether it's a pacemaker or it's work, it's a relationship, like I just think in general, what you feed your brain is so important. And so like the books you read, the podcasts you listen to, the people that you have conversations with, and I think all of that only can just make you stronger when it comes through your pacemaker journey, your life journey, your relationships journey. So that would be my biggest thing is like, be aware of like what you're feeding yourself because you are having a lot of conversations with yourself every single day and you want them to be positive.
100%. Yeah, 100%. Um, One of the things, and I'm just from my own experience, I don't have a pacemaker, but just in life is I remember like one day I was doing this doom scrolling that's
The
on
worst.
the PowerPoint here. And it clicked in my head. I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, and I started like, with all the algorithm stuff, like with Facebook and Instagram and whatever, it's like, if you look at something for 3 seconds, it changes your algorithm. Or if
Yep.
you click on it, it changes your algorithm. So I spent a period of time just clicking on like my newest thing is watching sloths because they're just the cutest thing ever. And I always smile. So even
Perfect.
as simple as something as simple as what you're looking at, you
Mm-hmm.
know, is really going to have an impact on your mindset.
Yep.
And for me right now, it's looking at sloths, because they're sweet. They always have a smile on their face. It's like,
They're the best.
their markings and that kind of distracts you or like puts you in a more positive mind frame and reminds you that things are, there's some crazy things happening in this world, but you're alive and you're doing well and you have people in your corner and they want you to be successful and happy and reminding yourself of that is, first and foremost
Yeah.
to being, to feeling calmer and more resilient and able to take on the challenges that may come with a device or in life in general, that kind of thing. That's from my personal experience. And I think that, you connecting also, you mentioned you have people reaching out to you on your Instagram account and people connecting you and asking for advice and things like that. I think it's just really important. And that's why we exist. That's why the Pacemaker Club exists. That's why we're doing these cardiac cafes and hoping to share knowledge and experience and help, even if it just, resonates with one person,
Yeah.
then, that's a good thing.
I mean,
Yeah.
growing up, the only person I knew that had a pacemaker was my grandmother, and it was after me. So, and she was like, "We're part of the club," and I was like, "I'm president. I got it first. Like, get out of here." But yeah, no, I think it's great. I think this is incredible what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And we appreciate all of your support as well.
Of course.
Um, one last slide we have here, I think is, is there, I don't know, is there a takeaway you have? Is there anything that you want to mention? Is there anything you want to make sure that our watchers and listeners hear from you? And I'll kind of just turn the floor over to you and let you, give us any
Yeah.
other pieces of info.
So what's kind of interesting is in my head on the last slide, my thought was, and I was like, I don't know if it's appropriate to say, but then you see this slide and you're like, okay, like maybe the thought should just come out.
Yeah.
But I remember as a kid being like I'm actually more equipped for life than you are because I have a pacemaker. If I'm not looking to be in a car accident, okay? But like if there was a car accident, I have a pacemaker. Like I remember just always being like, I have a pacemaker. Like I have because I have a pacemaker, I'm going to live to 100. Like I used to just kind of be like that. And so I don't know. I mean, I don't necessarily think that way as an adult, but I remember as a kid being like, well, I have a pacemaker and you don't. Nah, 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 nah. Like, I don't know. But it was maybe just a way for me to like feel not like an outsider because that
Right.
was one of the things that I did struggle with. I did struggle, as a kid worrying about like what happens if the pacemaker dies
Yes.
when I got probably to the high school year, especially when I started having all those surgeries in a row and I was like, what is actually happening? I did go to therapy for all of that. But I think that and correct me if these stats are not accurate anymore, Laura, but when I was on the board, it was 1 to 3 million people die a year because they don't have
Mhm.
access to a pacemaker.
Mhm.
And if I'm correct, Four Hearts has now done 17,000, saved 17,000 lives, or is it even more now?
More, it's over 18,000.
18,000. So when you think about like how blessed we are, like if you live somewhere where you have access to a pacemaker, you have won the lotto of life. And if that is not proof that there is somebody out there watching out for you, I don't know what is. And so for me to have had 7 surgeries, 6 pacemakers, I think it is. I think only one of them was the one where it fell in my armpit. They kept the same pacemaker. But like I've had
Mhm.
6 different pacemakers in 32 years. I don't know. I can't help but think my life is a blessing and that it's a miracle and that there is a technology that literally saves my life every single day so I can be a wife and a mother and a friend and be here with you guys like and that I was born in a place where that is possible. And so I think if there's nothing else, just to remember like what a beautiful life you get to live and you get to share that with everybody. And so that would be my biggest thing is like remember your pacemaker is a blessing.
100%. And those are beautiful words. That's why we do this. That's why we exist. That's why we bring people like you on to, to talk about your experience. And the bottom line is that you are blessed and you are a
Yes.
living miracle. And that is the gift that, we're trying to provide as a nonprofit to the people who don't have as much access, who don't have the financial ability, who don't have the insurance, whatever their case may be. And are we going to get to all million to 3 million? I mean, probably not in my lifetime, but we're sure as heck going to try.
Yeah.
And we're sure as heck going to do everything we can to help support them as well, because everybody's life is a blessing. And having that gift and having that mindset is really what we're about. And having the support from people like you
Oh,
is what makes us, able to do
I
our mission.
pacemaker you.
I pacemaker you too. And with that, I don't know what else there is to say. I think we've hit it all. It's a blessing. We have lots of resources for patients who are out there. If you have other ones that you want to mention or comment on later on when we post this, please do.
Yeah.
We are here for our patients. We are here for the Pacemaker Club. We want to thank you, Jess, and I hope
Yes.
to,
Thank you. Thank you
yeah,
for having me. And yes
absolutely.
to all the things that you posted there.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. I hope that you've enjoyed being with us.
Of course.
I always enjoy talking to you and seeing
Oh,
you. And yes, thank you very much.
oh, the
And
hearts.
we still have to get that shirt made by Pacemaker You.
I
So
pacemaker you.
with that, I'll talk to you soon. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.